for everyone to understand. When people become golden idols, and I'm going to read from an original script that I wrote called The Empty Pedestal, because many of us do not realize that we have idolized ourselves through others and have, in doing so, become idol worshippers. I don't know how else to put it. What does the Bible say about, I'm going to get preachy for a minute, Bible verses about idols and idolatry? Exodus 20.3, chapter 20, verse 3, you shall have no other gods before me. Leviticus 26:1, you shall not make idols for yourselves or erect any carved image or pillar. Psalm 115, 4 through 7. Isaiah 44:9, all who fashion idols are nothing, and the things they delight in do not profit. What does that actually mean? Why was God so concerned about we humans worshiping idols? Well, all you got to do is look around in America, where we worship entertainers who are complete frauds. The other one jumped off a building the other day, was supposed to, I don't even know who he was. Another one jumps off a building because no one's watching his movies anymore or listening to his records. He jumps out of a window because he has no reason to live. That's kind of sad. When you become an idol to yourself and you see others worshiping you, let's say you're a famous person listening to me or a business person, people look up to you. What happens when they stop looking at you? What happens when you're no longer popular? What happens when you lose your audience? Do you die because there's no reason to live? That's because you're worshiping the idol of yourself. That's how I see it. That's the whole story. There's nothing more to be said about it. That's what God was trying to warn us about. That's the whole story in a nutshell. When people become idols. So we're live now on many different channels at the same time. It's going to be a very short one. And this is a good one. This God Talk. This is a very good one. I want to just check on one thing before I go into this in a little more detail. God Talk. When people become golden idols, the empty pedestal. So we're live on X, we're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, and we are being watched around the world in a certain number of places by certain people who either are coming from church, going to church, or don't go to church anymore, but still want a touch of God Talk. Just a touch. People still have a little remnant within them of a desire to hear what the old people said about such things. So they tune into this guy on these channels and they hear what he's ranting or raving about today. I could entitle this, I found this little note this morning, titled The Ravings of a Very Sane Man. I think that's funny. Yeah, call me what you will. Now, this story that I'm about to read to you called The Empty Pedestal, I wrote a while ago, a couple of years ago. I wrote it in April 20th, 2017, The Empty Pedestal. I believe you can find it on Kindle, in a Kindle edition, under the title Roses, a very obscure work of Michael Savage. Roses. I started it a number of years ago. I kept adding to it. I haven't looked at it in years. I've kind of abandoned the project. But I was thinking last night, what can I talk about today? What is relevant to talk about today? I said, well, we idolize our politicians, for example. We look up to them like they're golden idols, whether it be Trump or Kamala. I mean, there's a madness in this. I have said 1,000 times, it's not about a man, it's about the country. And if the man has a track record of preventing wars and of running an economy like a business, not like a government out of control, that's the man to vote for. It's not about the man, it's about his policies and the people around him. So you think about yourself. I was in a Chinese restaurant the other day that I go to once in a while, and there's a fish tank next to the table. Beautiful fish, saltwater tank. And it hit me so, there was a sadness in it. One of the fish kept swimming to the end of the tank where there was a mirror glass and kept seeing herself or himself in that mirror and kept going to it, going to it, going to it, going to it. And I said, oh my God, we're all like this fish in this tank. We all are we're falling into our own image in the tank. We're all trapped in our own fish tank, looking at ourselves one way or the other. It's crazy, isn't it? When you think about it. So I said, I wrote about this in a fiction called The Empty Pedestal. Now, this thing about idolizing self or someone else or an entertainer or a politician goes back to ancient times. And when I was writing The Empty Pedestal, I wasn't thinking about that. I was just writing a pure story. The Empty Pedestal. I'm just going to read it to you. If you want the whole story, it's in a volume, slim volume called, oh, it's in Kindle. And it's in Kindle under the title Roses. Roses, if you want to get a copy of it, electronic copy. You're getting it for free right now. What I ask you to do is just listen and share it with people. If you want to hit the like button, that would be great. If you want to subscribe, that would be wonderful. So you know when I'm going to be live. So let's go. The Empty Pedestal. The Empty Pedestal. Start again. Clear the air. The Empty Pedestal. Voila. In idealizing the other, we elevate ourselves, thought Siggy. By demonizing who we once idealized, we destroy both. The trick was to let go, empty the studio of all traces. And so Sig set about ridding his loft of all traces, down to the model's scotch glass and favorite coffee cup. Sig was near 80 years of age, looked 55, a product of health paranoia, watching every bite, the bike, the insane doses of vitamins, and ages of daytime sleep. Aisha had become a fixture in his life. She lived with another man, but visited to pose so frequently these past 7 years, he came to think of her as his young wife. But a wife she never was, refusing to become his mistress, but loving him still. She looked up to Sig as a demigod. She had never met anyone like him before she began posing for his sculptures. And after all these years and several forays into the world of the opposite sex, Aisha still saw him as one of a kind. One day it was all over. The precise reason was never given. He just told her he would no longer be sculpting. She sensed this was coming for months. He had told her he could no longer take the pain of rejection, that he was not a mannequin, but she would not yield. Yes, she still remembered her first orgasms with him when she was sent or went to a place she had never been. No man ever, those 30 years younger, no man ever, no man even those 30 years younger ever took her there again. But she refused to be his whore, and so they had settled into the weekly session of posing, she posing and he molding. Tall and bone thin, she was the archetype of the rejecting anima, a stereoisomer of the very love and warmth he required. But did he really want the claustrophobia of true love, the amoeba-like grasp of sex? He no longer knew. He came to accept the cold detachment as his norm. She on a pedestal, he at the lump of clay. And the day came when all traces were removed, not just of Aisha, but of the studio. Sorry, my microphone was over here. But of the studio as a working laboratory of beauty. The small kiln went first. He felt the heat that made her form, once gone, would take with it all traces. He took the unformed blocks of clay down to the street and threw them unwrapped into the beaten up old trash cans. He had thought of giving these costly bricks to another sculptor, but in their inertness lay the pregnancy of Aisha's many forms. Lacking any soul, he impulsively decided to discard these rare earths rather than bury them with any religious ritual. Are you with me, folks? I hope so. For a fleeting moment, he recalled his atheistic immigrant Russian communist father saying to him as a little boy, "There is no God. When I'm dead, you can throw me in a garbage can." The thought of his father in a trash can, broken, used up, and folded to fit, tormented him ever since. Now, feeling the utter bleakness of the universe without Aisha, Siggy tossed the untouched bricks of clay into the waiting trash cans on the street. It was cold and snowing as he secured the lid. Tightening his collar, he glanced down Rivington Street, seeing the generations who had occupied these old tenement buildings and small loft factories. From teeming clusters of families struggling to gain a hold in America to the current wave of poseurs, pretending to be artists, writers, models, web makers, God knows what. It seemed to Sig they all lived on small inheritances or worked in uptown offices by day, smoking weed and drinking at night, playing at La Boheme. Taking the large elevator back up to his studio, he almost failed to recognize what had become his life. Emptiness assailed him as a vulturous force which seemed to fly at him with open black wings. He began to choke, unable to breathe. Splashing water on his face and head did little but make him wet. He felt as if he was drowning. Dizzy, he grasped at the pedestal he had used to display the many forms of Aisha. It fell over and smashed into dozens of plaster pieces. Rushing to the large mirror he had used for secondary perspectives, as she posed, Sig stood at an unfamiliar presence. His hair had gone from a salt and pepper to pure white, as had his beard. In a sweat, he tore off his clothing to look at his body, hoping to regain some sense of time, space, and place. The same body that had been preserved for decades, frozen at 55. The same body she had told him a week before as he struggled, as he stepped in front of her and asked, "How do I look? Am I as good as when we met?" "Perfect," Aisha told him, still clearly defined and straight. And as suddenly as she had left his life, so too his youth. In an instant, he saw a shriveled 80-year-old man ready for the trash can. That's it, my friends. That's the entire story today. The golden idols, the empty pedestal. I hope that you've understood and enjoyed some of this small talk. On this day's God Talk, I try to do them every week on a Sunday morning for you. And here I am. And I thank you for listening. Hit the like button, subscribe, and hope to see you again next week with God's will and your listenership. I shall return.